Hello everybody, my name is Winder, and today I'll be showcasing the 5 most important tips you have to know to succeed in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. If you haven't played a Counter-Strike game before, there are a ton of concepts and mechanics never really explained to you once you jump into CSGO, but you need to know to do well. If you've played Counter-Strike for a while, there's a good chance you know some of these tips, but I've met over and over players in all types of ranks who don't understand some of these concepts, so I recommend sticking around until the end of the video no matter your skill level. I also haven't seen any other videos which really went over them in the detail I hope to bring, so that gave me the inspiration to make this video. On top of that, my most successful video by about 6 times was a CSGO video, link in the description, and a lot of people were telling me to make more CSGO videos, so let's just jump right into this. I know, pretty simple stuff. There's a lot more nuance to weapon accuracy than just this. I'll go over the basics, then get deeper and deeper as we continue. The majority weapons, like the rifles, heavy weapons, accurate pistols, and accurate SMGs, require you to stand still to make the spread of the weapon tight and make sure you get the most accurate shot. If you're moving in any direction, the spread will widen significantly and make it so there's almost no chance you get to hit your target. That's about as far as any other CSGO video will take you. However, I'm not any other CSGO video. I'm Winder, the holder of hidden truths. A lot of the weapons will punish you for standing still while using them, and are a ton more effective while moving. P90 for instance, or the Pro 90 as it's often called, is an example. This high-priced SMG has little to no disadvantage taken from moving while aiming, making it a great weapon to run with. Yes, like literally run and gun with. As a rule of thumb, if the weapon's spread does not get widened too significantly by movement, you would probably put yourself at a tactical disadvantage if you aren't strafing while shooting. Movement is super important in gunfights because you don't want them to have a stationary target to shoot at, because that's obviously a lot easier to hit. Common weapons that you should move around with are the Glock, R8 revolver, P90, PP Bison, and the Mag 7. If you don't have this understanding down, then it's a great idea to turn on dynamic crosshairs on from the game settings for a while and try out different weapons to see how their spread changes as you move. This skill is incredibly important to making sure you are a great CSGO player, because shooting is obviously the most important thing in this game and can make or break you as a player. The main thing you have to know about guns in CSGO are they are nothing like COD or Battlefield. They are incredibly distinctive, and you shouldn't use any one of them in the same way you'd use another, unlike other shooters where most guns only have slight differences to their stats. In CSGO, you must have a general understanding of each weapon to know which gun is the best to enter in a fight and what kind of chances you'll have of winning an engagement. For example, the AK-47 is known for its one-shot headshot potential no matter if the enemy has a helmet or not, but has high recoil, making it harder to aim. The M4A4 and M4A1S are both more accurate, have easier to control recoil patterns, but can't one-shot headshot an enemy if they have a helmet. The AWP is a one-shot kill to all body parts but the legs and the arms, while the SSG, or the Scout, is a two-shot to all areas except the head, where it's always an instant kill. The P90 is great to run and gun with, the PP Bison has weak, low damage pellets but doesn't lose much accuracy while running or jumping, the MP7 and MP5 are relatively accurate SMGs but also suffer from low damage, and more. You can learn these facts by constantly trying out new weapons and learning about their strengths and weaknesses. All of this is vital to know because regardless of what a lot of players today seem to believe, there are a lot of situations where switching to a worse weapon will higher your chances of winning an engagement. Common example is 1 versus 1 scenarios where you're the last man standing but are using an AWP. Oftentimes, players will tell you not to trade the weapon for, say, an SMG on the ground maybe, because of how expensive and good the AWP is. But if you need to rush the enemy or are preparing for a close vicinity fight, there's nothing worse than putting yourself at a disadvantage by not using the weapon which will have the easiest and most effective chance of winning the fight. You need to be smart and constantly assess the situation you're in so you know what kind of chances you have of beating your opponent and what kind of approach you should go with. Knowing what kind of weapon your enemy has is also a great piece of knowledge because it helps you have a better idea of how they're going to play, which is generally going to be based on what kind of weapon they have. You'll be able to guess this by what kind of weapons they have killed your teammates with in the kill feed, or what kind of weapons your teammates may have had that the enemy team players may have picked up later. You have to always have a good understanding of the situation to make sure you enter engagements with the highest chance of winning possible. The best weapon to have isn't always the most deadly, but the one which will make it easiest to win the round. The economy system in Counter-Strike is undoubtedly the biggest formula change in the series that separates it from other shooters. Almost all FPS games have their primary modes function without one, so if you're new to this kind of system, it can be a lot to get the hang of. If you aren't so new, it's still a challenge of understanding how to take advantage of it and how to help your entire team gain an advantage over the opponent. When you win a round, you'll get a large static amount of cash, while if you lose a round, you and your team will get a lot less, which will ramp up as you lose rounds back to back. A lot of times after you lose a round, you and your team will typically scramble around to use the rewards off the previous round to put up some sort of defense against the enemy. Most of the time, if you don't have enough for a full buy, which is enough money to buy an AK or an M4 along with armor and nades, then you're only putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you cannot full buy while the enemy can, then buying what you can is usually a bad choice because the other team already has a better chance of winning the round, which will translate to your team having a good chance of losing yet wasting all of your money. When the odds are stacked up against you and your team and you do not have enough for a full buy, it's best to save so you have enough money to put up a good fight next round instead of losing 2 rounds in a row while attempting to buy in both of them. Now, a lot of players loosely know these rules, but what can really ruin the average competitive player is consistency. When your team has won a lot of rounds in a row and the money keeps piling up, this isn't an excuse to keep buying ops or auto rifles or other expensive weapons just because you have the money. The smartest thing you can do is stay consistent to your loadout, which allowed you to get on the winning streak in the first place. In other words, don't feel the need to overbuy when you keep winning rounds and keep getting money, because in general, you can succeed with almost any weapon. If you do well with one, don't feel the need to buy another just because it's more expensive. Communication is a very important skill in all team-based games, but because of how competitive Counter-Strike is, you have to pay a little bit more attention. The HUD is limited compared to other shooters, and you don't get as many indicators of where the enemy is. Like how in COD, when someone shoots, you see where they are on the minimap. Because of all these limitations, you should depend on each other as a team to get as much information about the situation as possible. Knowing where the enemy is and where they are pushing from is incredibly important information, and if you can't give that info to your teammates, that may be the reason you're stuck at your rank. As soon as you see the enemy in a round, especially on the counter-terrorist side, you should call out to your teammates where they're coming from and how many you've seen. Your teammates should do the exact same thing for you, and if it's even only a couple rounds and you haven't heard them say anything, don't be afraid to ask, because it could really be the difference between winning and losing a match. To do all this, you should know callouts for maps that you commonly play on, which you can find from a War Owl video, I guess. Or just be incredibly good at describing places so your words aren't entirely useless on voice chat. Anyway, you'll need to learn to be able to communicate what you know about the game situation to the rest of your teammates, and many times no matter how insignificant it may be. Telling a teammate that a certain weapon is where it is can really help them find it and use it to provide for a stronger and more well-prepared next round. Ideally, you're going to want to have your entire team have the same understanding of the game situation so you can all act cohesively and work like an actual team. Don't be afraid to speak your mind about what tactic you think would benefit your team the most, because even if it's unconventional, oftentimes the best and most effective strategies are the most unorthodox. And just know that the element of surprise is just as effective in silver ranks as it is in professional tournaments. This is probably the most complex and misunderstood concept of the entire game by players of all skill levels. Don't do the same thing, and remember to always dynamically change. There's so many benefits of this concept in Counter-Strike, yet I almost see no one preaching about it. The first primary advantage of doing this is beneficial match-wise, and once again, it has to do with the element of surprise. Constantly changing up where you go, what weapon you use, where your setup is while defending sites, your strategy for pushing into a site yourself, the pace at which you play the game, and more. The enemy will never be able to follow your actions, and much of the game's final result depends on who can predict the other team's choices better. If you expect the same player to set up in the same spot with the same weapon, it's not a difficult task to flank that player and beat them over and over. If an enemy pushes the same site with the same weapon at the same time each round, there's a high chance you'll be able to counter their strategy with ease. Changing sites and tactics like the speed you and a team will push at, offensively and defensively, will really throw off the enemy, which really heightens your chance of winning the game. Now, the second primary advantage of doing this is more, how do I say, like general, I guess? No, or long-term, that sounds better. If you constantly change up your game and play different maps with different weapons using different strategies, over time you will be a far better Counter-Strike player than the guy who queues for Dust 2 and Mirage every time and rushes into the site every time they get the chance. There's a million different ways to change up the situation in Counter-Strike that in order to understand the most effective and successful ways to play, you'll have to experience all these situations yourself. You can't watch a video on how to play a site or how to push into an area and copy the steps like a Lego instruction book. Everyone plays the game differently and reacts with situations in a different manner, and no one specific way to do something will be the most effective for everyone. We all have differing skills and weaknesses, and if you try to play to another's strength in an area where you're not so great in, you'll have a difficult time for sure. Maybe you're better with rifles like the AK or the M4 because they're used to shooters like Halo or Team Fortress, so it's smarter to take a longer distance approach with a rifle. You could also be fond of close-up encounters like that of Call of Duty games. You play well with an SMG in a more rushing fashion. It's all about how you enjoy playing and what kind of style of play makes you perform the best. And those two categories often overlap because you'll probably have the most fun in CSGO when you're playing at your best level. Trying new things in video games is always a lot of fun, so I recommend you try your best to make your playing style inconsistent and learn new things. And if that isn't so much fun for you, don't bother. Do whatever you think is most fun for you. I've deranked 7 different times because of that, and I'd do it again because it's fun. And that should be your #1 priority in all of gaming. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and a massive shout out to you for watching my video. As a small creator like me, it's hard to grow, but recently I've been growing insanely quickly compared to the last few months. Like, no joke, I've gotten more subscribers just this week than my first 6 months combined. And I honestly couldn't do it without you, like as a fact. Like, I couldn't do it if people didn't subscribe. That's not really how the system works. Like if you liked the video, comment if you have any questions or suggestions, as that's exactly how this video was made. And yeah, subscribe for more. Thanks a ton, guys. I hope to see you again. Peace.